Thank you very much, Felipe. It's an honor to be here. I want to first of all thank all of you for being here and honoring the memory of Art Blumenfeld. How many of you actually knew Art, just by a show of hands? I know many of you did. You know, he was really an institution in New Mexico government circles in that you heard a little bit about his academic career, but more important for people like me who were practitioners, Art was really a role model. He was a role model in many different ways that sometimes, not everybody recognized him. As I was preparing to come tonight, I was mentioning to Dr. Veronica Garcia, who many of you know, who was the executive director of New Mexico Voices for Children. I was telling her, well, I'm going to the Blumenfeld lecture. She says, oh, Art, I know Art and Jane quite well. I said, well, how did you know them? Well, Art and Jane had created something called a college enrichment program that Veronica was one of the first participants in, and because of that particular program, Veronica went on to really great things, including being the state's first secretary for public education. I met Art, I don't know, early on in my career. I mean, he was kind of a intimidating figure in some ways because with the role that he played in terms of helping to create tax policy in New Mexico. Art Blumenfeld and Franklin Jones, our two people, are responsible for, as much as anyone, for the way New Mexico's tax structure developed over a long period of time. But he was also a very personable guy in that when I was appointed to one of my positions, I think it was Secretary of the Department of Finance Administration, in the mail one morning I get this letter from Art Blumenfeld. I opened up and he had cut the article out and wrote me a handwritten note that said, congratulations, I'm so proud of you, we're looking for great things from you. And I thought, this is a really great human being who would just take a few minutes to recognize someone like this. And I very much appreciated receiving that from Art. Well, my responsibility here is to not talk about Art, it's really to talk about our guest speaker. But before I do that, I just wanted to give all of you a heads up that those of us that are on the advisory board for the School of Public Administration have been talking about an event that's coming up in just a couple of years where we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary of this program. So just a heads up, we'll be back in touch with you. You know what that means in the not too distant future to help us plan for and celebrate the incredible history that the School of Public Administration has had and the impact that the school has had on New Mexico government at the state level and at the local level and at the federal level. And one other quick thing. We do have two people here tonight, at least two I know of, that were graduates of the very first class in it. Maureen and Vic, would you stand up for just a second? I just want to recognize them as, and is there anyone else? Well, thank you. Well, you have Commissioner Hart Stebbins' bio in front of you. I'm not going to read it to you, but I would like to just to say a couple of things. A couple of things I think that Art would be very proud of in terms of the way that Maggie has pursued her political career. Jobs, right? And I can see all those students out there that are getting ready to graduate saying, yeah, jobs, that's probably pretty important. So showing a leadership role for Bernalillo County and helping to create and preserve jobs in Bernalillo County would be one. And the other, and possibly even more important, is the leadership role that she has shown in trying to establish a more vigorous and responsive behavioral health system. We don't have to go into all of the sort of bad things that have happened in our community because we lack a strong behavioral health system, but we need leaders like Maggie who are out front showing that we can do things differently and we can make progress and we will make progress. Commissioner Hart Stebbins is a scholar in her own right and an athlete, having graduated from Harvard, but putting that to practice now, putting that to work in the role of of being an elected official. I think maybe there's probably a few other higher callings. So with that, let me introduce our guest speaker tonight, Commissioner Maggie Hart Stebbins.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for those very kind words. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here tonight. You know, usually events like this make me nervous, really nervous for weeks in anticipation of having to speak. But tonight, I really feel that I am among friends. So I want to first of all say thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I want to express my very sincere thanks to the members of the advisory committee who have given me this great honor of delivering the Art Blumenfeld Lecture. I was more than surprised to receive the call from Dr. Gonzalez and very humbled when I looked at the individuals who have been chosen to do this before me. Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to take up the full 90 minutes that you promised me, but I'm going to do my best, okay? So I'm really delighted to be here at this very lovely dinner, celebrating the memory of Art Blumenfeld and also sharing All Souls Day with you, a day when many cultures and faiths, including mine, take the time to honor their loved ones who have gone on ahead of them. In my church, we have All Saints Day and All Souls Day. While All Saints Day gets more attention, I've always been a little more comfortable with All Souls Day, a day that honors people who have not yet achieved sainthood and maybe never will, but ordinary people who served as examples of basic goodness, love, and integrity that I have tried to emulate. I don't build an altar every year, but I do keep photographs of my loved ones on a bulletin board above my desk to remind me of what I want to be and what I should be doing with my life. There are photos of people I have loved and people who loved me, my friends, inspirations, and champions. People like Charlotte and Jim Toulouse, Cecilia Ransom, Bob McCannon, Joe Lang, Jim Dolan, and Vicente Jimenez. And I have photographs of my grandparents, all of whom died before I really got to know them or fully appreciate them, but whose lives of hardship and love continue to serve as inspiration. There are other photographs of people whose struggles in life shape the work that I do as a commissioner. People like Mikey Duran, a friend of my son's, whose struggle with addiction and whose overdose death at age 20 keeps me focused on addressing the lack of mental health and addiction services in this community. I now add the photograph of APD Officer Daniel Webster, a good and decent man whose death last week reminds me of the risks our law enforcement officials face every day when they put on a badge and head out to keep this community safe. It's appropriate that we honor Art Blumenfeld on this All Souls Day, almost 15 years to the day after his death. He was quite the person to emulate, someone who is committed to this community and committed to honest and thoughtful public service. His work at the city is best known. His works of art, as they're called, achievements like the Biopark and the Chemo Theater remodel. But his work on the public's behalf wasn't limited to his service at the City of Albuquerque, but included multiple roles at the University of New Mexico, at Beaver, the Anderson School, and at this School of Public Administration, where he shared his expertise and helped shape the schools in which students could learn the important work of local government. He was always focused on using the resources he had to make this community better, and we all live in a place that is more enjoyable and prosperous because of his good work. And Art Blumenfeld's story deserves to be told more often because the public needs to hear about good people in government, not just the scandals on the front page. And I know there have been times in our nation's history when people have lost faith in government, when they've had a great disdain for elected officials. But not in my lifetime has the public been more disgusted with politics and our political leadership than it is now. And that fact was made clear to me early on in my career as a commissioner. And I'll tell you a little story. In May of 2009, Governor Bill Richardson appointed me to the Bernalillo County Commission. and I will confess that it was unexpected and happened very suddenly. I sent him a letter of interest on a Thursday afternoon, and a few days later, the governor called me at 9 o'clock in the morning and said, "You're my choice. You're getting sworn in today at noon, and your first commission meeting is tonight." So just like that, I was thrust from my quiet little job at the Mid-Region Council of Governments to the front page of the paper. I was suddenly one of 5 people making decisions about a government that serves 670,000 people, covers 1,150 square miles, has 2,500 employees, and a general fund budget of $250 million. The job also means that I serve on the Water Utility Board, the Metropolitan Transportation Board, the Board of Rio Metro, and the ABC Community Schools Partnership Board, each of which comes with its own challenges and opportunities. It was, to put it mildly, overwhelming. So I was a little off balance as it was those first couple of days, and then shortly after my appointment, I had an encounter that gave me an idea of what I'd really gotten myself into. My appointment to the commission happened to be the same week as the state high school baseball tournament, and our son's team was working its way towards the championship. In one of those games, a man I'd known for some time, someone who knew me as a parent, came over to me with a look of utter disgust on his face and said, "I never knew you were one of them," meaning a politician. And then he stormed off. So I was taken aback, and I wondered how someone who'd known me as a soccer and baseball mom, as a mother of 4 pretty decent kids, could all of a sudden associate me with all kinds of awful things now that I was a politician. And his comment made clear the reality that a great many people have nothing but scorn for most elected officials. It made me realize that now I had a role in shaping public opinion about government and the people who choose to run for elected office, and a responsibility to set a high standard for my own conduct. I made a promise that I was not going to be one of them. So how can someone in local government avoid being one of them? How do we go about restoring public confidence in government? Well, we can start by taking partisanship and personality out of the governing process. I've always believed that it's appropriate to run a vigorous, spirited, even partisan campaign for office. That is part of our American political system. But I also believe that when the campaign is over, it's every elected leader's job to put aside partisanship and politics to do what's right for the community. And I know that's hard, given the way that campaigns are run these days, but elected officials did it for decades, and that takes a level of maturity and dedication to the public good to take that road. We need to demonstrate that we're making the most of the resources that taxpayers entrust to us. That requires transparency and very often a willingness to play nicely with others. The motivation to build partnerships among individuals, local governments, and the private sector. And collaboration among local governments can work, and we have some good examples of that. About 2 years ago, we began work on a partnership with New Mexico Appleseed, a local hunger organization. My friend Jennifer Ramo and the City of Albuquerque were part of that partnership to take advantage of a new USDA program that provides after-school meals rather than just snacks for low-income children. As Jenny Ramo and many of us know well, for some kids in this community, those school meals may be the only food they get. So a meal, rather than a snack, makes a big difference when they go home. We envisioned a program that is now up and running. In an old community center kitchen that wasn't being used, the city made the kitchen available, the county provided funding for the renovation, and now, every month, we are serving 30,000 healthy, substantial, locally sourced after-school meals to children who really need that sustenance. Another great cooperative community effort that's underway and showing remarkable results is the ABC Community Schools Partnership, a collaboration that includes Bernalillo County, the Mayor of Albuquerque, the Albuquerque City Council, the APS School Board and Administration, the Albuquerque Business Education Collaborative, and United Way. And Dr. Vyforce is a very valued member of this group. Based on a proven strategy with inspiration from places like Oregon and the Harlem Children's Zone in New York, the community schools concept is simple. Connect struggling students and their families with the resources they need to succeed in school and life. Most of us can only imagine how hard it would be for a child to sit in a classroom, try to focus on a lesson, when he or she is hungry, sick, hurting from a toothache, homeless, pregnant, or struggling with depression or anxiety. The ABC Partnership employs coordinators at pilot schools who connect students and their families with whatever they need to overcome barriers to learning. That help can be tutoring, food assistance, housing, healthcare, job training, ESL and GED courses, emergency financial assistance, or academic mentoring. And those resources come both from the public and private sectors, with countless hours and contributions from people in our community who share our commitment to helping students succeed. The ABC Partnership is quickly expanding to help more students and families. 3 years ago, we had 4 community schools. We now have 23 in Albuquerque, and we support another 52 schools with quality after-school programming. That integrated focus on academics, health and social services, and community engagement has produced some remarkable results. In some of our community schools, we've seen a 20% increase in math and reading scores for economically disadvantaged high school students, and an 18% decrease in unexcused absences. And some of the innovation that's coming out of our community schools is being recognized nationally as a model for schools around the country. You may have already heard about Homework Diner and the new College Career Diner. Those innovations are being replicated and promoted around the country as models of success. The ABC Community Schools Partnership is a demonstration of sincere collaboration. Each partner brings our respective resources to the effort, and there is no elbowing for credit, just a shared desire to give every child in this community an equal shot at success. And there are many other successful partnerships. The progress we are finally making on the remediation of the decades-old jet fuel spill at Kirtland Air Force Base. I will be honest, there were times when I felt like a voice in the wilderness and wondered if I would actually live to see the day when active remediation of that contamination got underway. But today, after 6 years of work, we are seeing action on that front, thanks to the collaborative efforts of a very dedicated group of partners: the Water Utility Authority, the New Mexico Environment Department, the United States Air Force, and New Mexico's members of Congress. And one more example of effective collaboration: the Bernalillo County Criminal Justice Review Commission, made up of all of our partners in the criminal justice system: judges, law enforcement, public defenders, DAs, and the Administrative Office of the Courts. That group has met monthly for over the past 2 years and agreed upon more than 20 initiatives to move criminal cases more efficiently. All of those efforts are examples of community leaders, both government and private, coming together, getting out of their silos, dropping egos and the desire for credit, and bringing collective will and resources to the table. As author Greg Horowitz put it, we are making the switch from ecosystems to ecosystems. And right now before us, we have one great challenge that demands the very best that we can offer, and that is solving the behavioral health crisis in New Mexico. Providing adequate mental health services is one of the greatest challenges we face in the state of New Mexico, not just as a humanitarian issue, but as a public safety priority. In 2015, the services we offer to people in our state who struggle with mental illness and addiction are in large part delivered in incarceration settings. Like many communities in the United States, our local jail is the largest provider of behavioral health services in the state. And we continue to see the results of untreated mental illness in the forms of substance abuse, homelessness, suicide, violence, and other behaviors that compromise public safety and bring people into our jail. A study we did last year showed that fewer than half of the Bernalillo County residents who need behavioral health services actually get them. And the thing I hear over and over from families of people in the grip of mental illness and addiction, there's no place to go for help. There just aren't enough resources. So this is not going to be an easy problem to solve. It's going to take money and an incredible amount of coordination among governments, providers, patients, families, and organizations, public and private. But I see progress. I believe that we have a new public awareness of the situation and an understanding of the huge costs of not taking aggressive action. Last November, voters overwhelmingly approved an advisory question that asked if they supported a new gross receipts tax dedicated to expanding behavioral health services in Bernalillo County. Approval of that question was nearly 70%, with every precinct in Bernalillo County voting at least 55% in favor. Approval was consistent across income, gender, geography, political affiliation, ethnicity, and education. So that's a pretty strong signal that the people of this community know there's a problem and want us to do something about it. And that work has begun. Since April of 2014, there have been scores of meetings, discussions with individuals living with mental illness, their families, private and nonprofit providers, law enforcement, first responders, city councilors and mayors, county commissioners, state representatives and senators, New Mexico Human Services Division, members of our congressional delegation, and others. For several months last year, over 60 of us participated in the City, County, State Behavioral Health Task Force to understand the layout of our behavioral health landscape and make recommendations on how to fill the gaps and connect the dots. We have a new Central New Mexico Behavioral Health Resource Working Group that includes major regional behavioral health funders: Bernalillo County, the City of Albuquerque, Sandoval County, Valencia County, Torrance County, the University of New Mexico, United Way, Presbyterian Hospital, and the State of New Mexico. That group is exploring opportunities for collaboration, engaging the willingness to align and leverage our resources towards a more coordinated, comprehensive system of care. As I said, that will not be easy, and I see a complicated road ahead before we get to where we need to be. But if we do it right, we can bring about landmark change in the lives of a very vulnerable segment of our population. As I approach that challenge, I always keep in mind the many people who suffer from mental illness and addiction, who desperately need and want access to services, who desperately need us to do a good job. I remember the individuals who came to our commission meetings and our press conferences, and those who seek me out to tell me their personal stories. Family members with stories of losing their children to overdose and suicide, and some who, despite years of doing everything possible, don't know if their son or daughter is dead or alive. And I remember the stories of hope, people for whom a caring individual and appropriate services took them out of a cycle of homelessness, emergency rooms, incarceration, and despair, and gave them a new life. The next several months will require the very best we can offer, and all of New Mexico leaders need to take advantage of this opportunity to structure a new system that will make an enormous difference in the lives of some of our families. There are days when I get so irritated at the pettiness and meanness of politics, at the bureaucratic roadblocks to getting things done, at the posturing and poaching and pontificating that goes on. I get frustrated by the people who want to turn back the clock on transparency and professionalism. And yes, campaigning is brutal, fundraising is demeaning, and all of this makes me more than ready to go back to my old life of privacy and relative serenity. But in the end, I always realize that this job is worth doing, and worth doing well, and worth every bit of energy I can put into it, because there is hope, there are results, and lives will ultimately change for the better. I remember the words of Dorothy Day, who wrote in her book, The Long Loneliness. What we would like to do is change the world, Make it a little simpler for people to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves as God intended them to do. And by fighting for better conditions, by crying out unceasingly for the rights of the workers, the poor, and the destitute, we can, to a certain extent, change the world. We can work for the oasis, the little cell of joy and peace in a harried world. We can throw our pebble in the pond and be confident that its ever-widening circle will reach around the world. At the beginning of my remarks tonight, when I talked about the people who inspire me, I didn't mention many of the people in this room tonight. There are so many of you who over the years have generously given me your time, your advice, and all the help I need to succeed. My brothers and sisters, who have been my fiercest defenders, my best friends, and my most steadfast allies all my life. My parents, Fred and Joan Hart, whose lives of public service have been an inspiration not just for me, but for the many, many people who have been lucky enough to know them. Whether they be students, attorneys, children in the legal system in need of an advocate, refugees fleeing oppression, or law students in need of encouragement. My upbringing was steeped in Jesuit values, the pursuit of excellence, and a profound, awe-inspiring commitment to equal opportunity, peace, and social justice for the poor, for the outsider, and for the marginalized. My parents have been an influence on more people than they'll ever know, and I've long felt blessed to know them and have their love, support, and inspiration in my life. I'm also informed and inspired by my 4 amazing children, I should say our 4 amazing children, of whom I'm incredibly proud. They have very graciously accepted my role as a politician, even though it means I have less time for them, and that they are more likely to end up in the news if they make a big mistake. My children give me a concrete reason to think about the future, the world I will leave behind, and they constantly motivate me to think harder and do more. And of course, I have the great influence and inspiration of my wonderful husband, Eric, who has been remarkably tolerant and supportive of my work at the county, even though I made the huge mistake of applying for the job without mentioning it to him. I would not recommend that to anybody. Eric tolerates the campaigning, the busy schedule, the missed dinners, the messy house, and all the impacts of my sometimes excessive focus on work. What people don't realize is that Eric's operations research background and commitment to efficiency has been the genesis of many of the changes we've made at the county, and I'm ever, ever grateful for his ideas, his love, and his support. Like all people, I am the sum of all the influences on my life, the generous support of many, many people here and elsewhere. I just do my best every day to be worthy of the opportunities that you all have made possible for me. And while we have a lot of work yet to do, I hope that when my career in public service comes to a close, I can look back and know that I was worthy of the trust you placed in me and all you've done to help me serve this community. Thank you very much.